Hey guys, welcome to the first edition of Baseball Strong. This is Jose Vazquez, licensed physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach. Today's topic is something that I believe we all ask ourselves this, but I get this from a lot of patients, former players, players in general, is they feel like they're doing everything right, but they're still not getting results. It's a very common thing that we all experience. We get medical advice, exercise, diet, and we get a plan, we get some instructions, and we start following the plan. But after a while, you realize, you know what, I'm not getting results. And sometimes we tend to think that we're doing everything right, but we got to sit back and reflect and decide whether or not we are doing everything necessary to get results. So, when it comes to health and well-being, let's just start there. We get advice from a doctor, for example, and you're following the medical regimen, the prescription to a T. You're doing it every day, and you feel like you're not getting results. In my opinion, the first thing you got to think about is, am I really doing everything correctly? I feel like in life, there's no such thing as balance. Sometimes we put effort in one thing, but other things in our life will go out of whack. It's the same thing with health. Sometimes we think that we are doing all the correct things, and we sit back and realize that we are not doing everything correctly. I feel like many of us have a blind spot for these things. And the reality of it is, I have yet to meet one person that actually gets it all right. I'm not trying to be negative or discouraging anyone that has the same question, but the reality of it is, we're not perfect. No one is. And no matter how well you follow the protocol, there's always going to be a loophole, a blind spot, or something that we are missing. It's important to be able to have the mindset that I'm going to go back, check everything again, go through my protocols, ask myself, am I doing everything correctly? Am I really doing everything correctly? For example, diet. No matter how much you count your calories, your carbs, your proteins, something always happens that can throw us off. You go to a party, you hang out with family, sometimes at home, you have junk food around, and there goes your diet. Exercise. We start exercising, we got a plan, we got a personal trainer, we are working out, we're working hard, we're putting in the time, we're showing up, but we didn't sleep well that night. So we skip a workout. We skip another workout. Next thing you know, we missed 2 or 3 workouts, you haven't worked out in 2 weeks. There goes the plan. So when it comes to deciding whether or not you're doing everything correctly, the first thing you got to think about, I got to look at myself. And I have to be a really, really good self-evaluator to decide whether or not I'm actually doing everything correctly. One of the things that I hear a lot from patients and players that I've worked with over the years, they'll come to me and say, hey, Jose, I've been doing this, and this, but I'm still having pain. And oftentimes during the medical history, or I begin to ask questions, and I start asking questions and to realize that there's a few things that they are missing. There's a few things that they have forgotten. I had a patient the other day that came in for back pain. We started working out, doing exercises. And one of the first things she told me is like, oh yeah, I used to do these exercises years ago and they felt really good, but I quit doing them. And so uh, when we think about that question about doing all the right things, I have to say, well, if you had kept on doing all those things, you probably would have gotten results and you would not be in this situation. And that's one example, but many times we have the answers as to why we're not getting results. And that's the first thing that I feel like we need to understand. When it comes to health and wellness, one of the things that we often ignore is that a plan is only as good as the person doing the plan. Sometimes, as people, we'll seek out help, and somebody will give us a plan. They'll prescribe a medication, prescribe an exercise program, without really understanding how that fits our lifestyle, how that meets the demands of our life. One of the things that as a strength coach that I always did, and every strength coach has to do this, whenever you prescribe anything, you have to consider the demands of the sport, the demands of the activity that you want to get to. And because not every program is perfect, because not every prescription protocol is perfect, you have to decide whether what you're doing is meeting the demands of your lifestyle. If you're an athlete and you want to be stronger and you're not lifting heavy weights, but you're exercising and perhaps you're fit as fit as anyone else, you might still get some results, but the result of being strong and demonstrating that strength on the field perhaps is not showing up. And then you ask yourself, well, I'm working out 3 times a week. I'm doing this and this and this, and I'm not getting results. Well, are you really meeting the demands of the sport? Same thing with our lives. Let's say you like landscaping. When you landscape and you're out on your yard and you're kneeling down, bending over, you get yourself in positions that actually stress the body. And so if you have a plan that does not address your ability to kneel down on the ground for a period of time, to be able to lift a bag of mulch, push her on a wheelbarrow or whatever, if your plan, if your protocol, if your program does not meet the demands of that thing that you're trying to accomplish, you're probably not going to get results. So when it comes to deciding whether you're doing all the correct things, no matter who prescribed it, no matter where you got the information, you always have to consider your goals. If my goal is to run a marathon, there are certain things that I must do to meet the demands of a marathon. So another thing to consider is the reality of it is the body is a mystery. No matter what we do, our body is going to do things that we cannot explain. Many times we wake up in the morning and we don't feel like it. The body does not feel well. We feel sick. We feel stiff. Things like this are going to derail the plans or the protocols that we're trying to follow. And oftentimes these things can add up and get you off your plan. So there are many reasons why our plans don't work. So when it comes to understanding this, you have to come to a decision. What do you consider success? What do you consider a valuable program? You have to decide for yourself. You can take a plan and give it to 10 different people, and every one of them is going to get different results. Let's just say for the sake of conversation, you're doing everything right. Let's say you're following it to the T, and you've done it, and you've have good goals. You have the right frame of mind about your goals, and the program is designed to meet the demands of your lifestyle, of your goals. Then perhaps maybe you need to find another source of information. Maybe you need to find another doctor, another coach, another trainer. I have worked with a lot of different athletes, many good ones, many bad ones, but they've all have had different people pour into their lives and help them in their careers. I haven't met many people that stick with the same coach their whole careers. I haven't met many people that stick with the same doctors and medical protocols, because as we age, that is something that we cannot beat. We're all getting older. Our bodies are wearing down, and our lives, with whatever you're trying to do, it's a game of adjustments. And so perhaps a protocol that a certain doctor gave you doesn't work for you. Well, go find another one. In my personal life, my wife went through a period of time where her weight became an issue after our third child. And as many women know, after 40, you begin to experience signs of menopause, and all that stuff starts coming on, and it comes at different ages, some sooner than later. The symptoms are real. The weight gain is real. The pain, the hot flash, all that stuff is real. And in our family, my wife went through a period of 4 to 5 years trying to figure out what was the best protocol for her. Went through different doctors, different wellness clinics, saw different people, tried different supplements, different medicines. And, it took her about 4 or 5 years to find what was right for her. So if you're doing everything right, if you follow it to the T and you're still not getting results, and you can really, really be honest with yourself that you have given it everything that you got, then perhaps it's time to find another source of information. This world is full of experts. There's a lot of smart people. There's a lot of good information out there in the internet. And so if you're not getting results, perhaps it's time to make a change. So as I, give you my opinion on these things, I'll welcome any questions, any comments, and we can discuss this topic as long as you want. But the reality of it is number one, we're not perfect. So following instructions, following protocols, programs, I bet that most of us can be honest and say, you know what, perhaps I'm not really following the program like I should. But if you are, like many other people too, they have spent many, I say sometimes years, trying to find the right doctor, the right person, the right coach, the right formula. And so consider all these things. Obviously, this is just my experience, some of which has been from my own personal experience. I have spent my whole life in physical fitness, rehab, sports performance, and whether you're a professional athlete or a homemaker or someone that just likes to work in their yard, it's all the same. It's all about how we approach life, how we make adjustments, and how we determine how successful the program really is. And so, in my opinion, when it's all said and done, it's up to you. It's up to me to figure out what's right, because there's so much information. There are so many opinions. Everyone's body is different. We all react different to treatments, protocols, medicines. So there it is, guys.
I'll throw you something here real quick.
All right, what do we got?
You ready for this?
Oh, yeah, let's go.
So in the chat, something came up. We have a Miss Erica over here, and not necessarily a question, but she has concern about hip flexors and her strength goals, not necessarily, but flexibility goals with the muscles that wrap around into the groin.
Yeah, so, okay, hip flexors. That's one of those muscles that give a lot of people trouble. It is a muscle that is responsible for a lot of what goes on in our midsection, what a lot of people call the core. That is also a muscle that when I first started as a strength coach, the hip flexors were the enemy. Everyone's back problems and fitness problems were because the hip flexors were tight. Well, one of the things that I'm starting to see nowadays is it's not that they're tight. Now people are saying that they're weak. So what really is the answer? So in my opinion, going back to your goals, if you are a fitness athlete, let's just say, and you need to be able to squat heavy and doing that type of workout, your hip flexors need to be a combination of flexibility and strength. They need to be strong enough to support your spine so that you can hold the weight, but also mobile enough so that you can sit deep into the squat. One thing that sometimes gets misunderstood is the difference between flexibility and mobility. Flexibility, by definition, is creating length in the muscle. Mobility is having the range of motion under control to achieve the movement that you want. So when it comes to hip flexors, you have to decide what is the movement that I want to accomplish. Do I need more mobility or do I need more strength? And so that depends on what exercise you're doing. Now, if you have pain, if it's an injury, now that's a totally different approach. If you have strained a hip flexor, then yes, you have to go through some period of rest, some kind of soft tissue work, some sort of exercise to create blood flow and promote healing, and then progress slowly back into the activity that you want to get back to. Many manual therapists do a good job of releasing the hip flexors or the iliopsoas. And so perhaps looking into someone that can do some soft tissue work would be of benefit. But in general, the problem with the hip flexors, I would say, is trying to determine what it is that you need. Do you need more stability and strength, or do you need more mobility and flexibility? And so, in my opinion, I tend to be on the side of let's strengthen them, because the hip flexor is a muscle that we have ignored for a long time because we want to stretch it and we don't train it often enough. And I believe that when it comes to exercise, we're constantly worried about our glutes and our hips and our hamstrings, and we often ignore the hip flexor. So if I'm going to put my 2 cents worth on this subject, I would say I would go toward strengthening the hip flexor.
Here's something at the table. So first off, I'm going to ask this, and then I'm going to get to a scenario, for instance. All right. So I see here, where would you recommend starting? So if you're uneasy or unsteady on your feet, a little bit lightheaded, like what would you think would be a really good place to first start out?
Okay. So let's address the lightheadedness. If you feel lightheaded with exercise, I would definitely get some medical advice. Go see a doctor. Lightheadedness could be many things. It could be vertigo, so it could be an inner ear problem, or it could be a blood pressure. It could be perhaps when you were trying to exercise, you did too much too soon. while exercising, you held your breath and felt a bout of dizziness. There are many reasons why you might feel dizzy. So I would caution that if you get dizzy when you're exercising, I would get medical advice, go see a doctor, determine the cause of dizziness. Once you've addressed the dizziness, if you want to start a fitness program, and you first obviously get a physical, be able to make sure that everything's working, your heart, your lungs, the dizziness is nothing serious. I would start with some first, most basic, easiest activity you can do is walking. Start by light walking 2 to 3 times a week. Start with 15 minutes, add 5 minutes here and there. And walking is a very good first activity for someone that wants to start a fitness program.
I was actually going to bring that up too, because I can see some in the chat talking about it being a fatigue type thing. So I was going to say, if I'm nothing against anyone in the chat here, but just me speaking on myself, I tend to be pretty lazy. So I like to try and come up with things that I can do I wake up in the morning, is the first thing that I can do with like very minimal effort that gets me going.
Okay. So, all right, let's say you're the type of person that doesn't like exercise, but you know you need it.
And I like that walking too, by the way.
And you want to do it early in the morning. Okay. I would start with stretching. You get up, sit up in bed. There's some hip stretches you can start doing. Start stretching your hips. Get up from the bed. Go ahead and do some forward bends and backward bends. In yoga, they call it sun salutations, where they bend forward, they take a deep breath, and they look up and they look down. That's a very easy way to get some blood flow. One of the things that we all experience at night is our bodies get stiff, because when we're laying down in the supine, what we call the supine position, all the fluids and everything that is in our body is settling down on the back half of our bodies. And so that creates a fluid shift that creates stiffness. And we all have this thing called fascia that are tissues that are underneath our skin that in some ways you can describe them as a sort of a wetsuit that is very pliable, that responds to fluid, that responds to stress, vibration, exercise. And so people sometimes consider exercise only going to the gym and lifting weights and walking and whatever. For me, exercise is anything that you do that begins to create blood flow within you, that begins to shift all that stiffness, all that fluid throughout your body. So by just simply getting up out of bed and doing some forward bends and breathing, doing some deep breaths, and perhaps doing some twists, some arm circles, all that stuff gets us started. Anytime we create movement, the brain has to work. The body's telling the brain, hey, we're doing stuff down here. So, I'm bending forward. You got to turn on some muscle so I don't fall over. And so the idea of the body moving, now you're creating this mechanism of movement throughout the body. And so the brain begins to do its thing. Now you got blood pressure rising up. You get body heat. You get fluid into the joints. The fascia is beginning to feel the shift in fluids. One of the things that happens to fascia when we don't move, it becomes stiff and sticky. And so as soon as we start moving, all that fluid runs through it, and it creates flexibility throughout the tissues. And, perhaps it's not going to, that type of movement is not going to prepare you for a marathon, but it'll wake you up and it'll get the body started.
So here's one just real quick. So now I'm doing my monthly or morning, we'll call it light exercises, walking, light stretching. is this the same thing as physical therapy, and if, or is it a part of physical therapy? And if not, what, or would this be anyways considered in like strength coaching? Because I guess what I'm trying to understand is what would be the overall arching difference between strength coaching and PT?
In my opinion, strength coaches and strength coaching will be more about, you're healthy. You just want to get better. You have no pain. There's no obvious dysfunction, and I just want to move better. So I would consider focusing on moving better when I'm healthy, gaining strength, getting flexibility. I would consider that more strength and conditioning. Now, when you have an injury, in my opinion, that becomes physical therapy. That's why we call it therapy. We're trying to address a problem. Is lack of fitness a problem? Yeah, perhaps. But the way I would divide that or separate that is, if I'm healthy, I'm doing some strength coaching. If I'm injured, I'm doing more physical therapy. But they both overlap, and they both kind of go back and forth. I mean, you work out, you start an exercise program. Perhaps you discover that you have pain because you haven't moved, so perhaps you're not hurting certain places. You start moving, you start doing things. Now you feel pain. So now you go to a physical therapist and you do certain exercises to address this problem. Goes away in a few weeks. I'll go back to normal exercises. Or perhaps I use some of those physical therapy exercises and they become part of my fitness program. One of the things that I did with the athletes is include some of these physical therapy type exercises, and I included them in their regular fitness program because as they started working out or whenever they played, they realized that certain body parts were tighter than others, certain areas were weaker than others. And so in order to do the conventional sport specific or the traditional exercise program, in order to do that well, they needed certain specific movements or exercises that will be considered more physical therapy. And so, then the program becomes all inclusive. You have physical therapy exercises and you got regular exercises. Some people like to call them correctives because you're trying to correct some sort of dysfunction. But the world of fitness, physical therapy, strength and conditioning, they intertwine. The whole point of both of them is to get you to move better and feel better. So either way, it's sort of the same, but in my opinion, pain would be the differentiating factor.
I got a question. So if I look at this from a, let's say a trifecta, and we were to say diet, exercise, what would be a good third leg to the tripod or the triangle?
Sleep.
Okay. Gotcha. And then what's most important? Because I hear people talk about diet all the time. Sleep's absolutely necessary. Can't do much if you don't have exercise.
Well, to decide which one's more important is a very difficult answer because they're all necessary. In my opinion, they're all interdependent. Unfortunately, sometimes some of us find one easier than others. For me, I find exercise easier because I like it. Sometimes exercise is not the preferred method because most people don't like to exercise. In reality, exercise can sometimes be painful, and painful in a way that you have soreness that you feel for the next couple of days. And for some people, it feels uncomfortable. For me, I don't mind it. I've always kind of liked the soreness because it makes me feel like I've done something. For other people, they have really good discipline for eating. They can watch their diet and they can maintain a diet that sustains them, that helps them keep their weight down. And so for some people, dieting seems to be an easier thing. But sleep is just as important because many of the healing, recovery actions of the body happen when we're sleeping. one of the things that sometimes we forget is that when we're sleeping is when our bodies produce the hormones that create the healing to address the stress that we've put ourselves throughout the day. And so I don't think I can say that one is better than the other. I would say that you need them all. And so going back to our original question is, am I doing all the things right? Well, if you consider those three and you can really say that my exercise program is addressing the demands of my life, my diet is helping me maintain the weight that I like, and when I sleep and I wake up the next day, or I wake up and I feel refreshed and rested, if you can say if you can say yes to all three of those, then great, good for you. But the reality of it is, we all have problems with each of them. And for me, I have a hard time sleeping. And even if I'm sleep deprived and I want to work out, I still find a way to work out. I may not be able to do as much or do the same, but because I like to exercise and I like to look a certain way, I know that if I exercise, my muscles are going to feel a certain way and look a certain way. And sometimes I'll admit, I sacrifice sleep because I don't sleep well, and I still haven't found a good regimen or routine for myself. But when it comes to those three, I like to exercise because I like the way it makes me look and feel. And in my opinion, for me, it allows me to have a questionable diet at times. I can get away with things that perhaps other people can't get away with. I can eat certain things that are probably not going to affect me too much because I'm constantly exercising. But I know that I pay the price because I don't sleep very well. So I don't know. There you go.
Here's one. It's kind of funny too. I think I'm starting to see a slightly common theme. So one, I'm seeing multiples around what can I do at home? And then two, we'll put it this way. First off, I don't know who Fungus Brains is. That's a really good name. Welcome to the group. Yeah. But yeah, the question on the deck for this one's, what would be ways to expand mobility in small ways at home? So for example, someone who's already limited in mobility by some sort of pain injury.
Okay. So, I would say, let's say you have back pain. Let's just go there because most people have back pain is very common. Most people have it. If you haven't had it, you're probably going to have it. So one of the things you could do at home is starting laying in bed. Start stretching your hamstrings. Lay on your back. Start stretching your hamstrings, your hip rotators. Start with flexibility of the legs. That's a very easy way, low stress on the back exercise that you can start to begin to get mobility. And you'll find that if your hamstrings get looser, your hips get looser, then you can start doing a bodyweight squat. Just as simple as find a sturdy, safe chair, sit on it, stand in front of it, stand up and down 10 times and see how your quads feel and your glutes feel. Squats are probably the most functional exercise that we all do. We all sit in chairs. We get in and out of our cars. We all go to the bathroom. And so we all need a certain amount of hip flexibility and leg strength to be able to get in and out of chairs. And so if you think about that function of life, find a chair that will support you and begin by doing 2-3 sets of 10. And you'll start seeing that you get a little burn on your quads, you get a little burn on your glutes. And by doing body weight and using a chair, it should be no stress on your low back. So perhaps stretching in bed, your hamstrings, your glutes, your hip rotators. Find a chair, do some bodyweight squats, do some lunges, hold on to something if you have bad balance, or if if you don't feel like you can, hold on to something and just do a lunge movement.
But real quick, how much is enough? Because hypothetically, let's say we're all pain patients here. All right. So I don't want to do too much and I don't want to do too little. So should I do something until it burns? What does burn really mean? Start sets of 5 if I can't get to 5.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you some. That's a very it's hard question to answer, but let me give you some parameters so that you can decide. Okay. Let's start with pain level. So 0 to 10, 10 being the most excruciating pain ever. So if you want to start an exercise program, judge the movement, judge the feeling to about a 3 or 4 out of 10. So when you exercise, try to keep it at a 3 or 4. And if you do that 2-3 times a week, over time, that 3 and 4 will become a 1 and 2. And then when it becomes a 1 and 2, I can say, okay, well, I've been doing 2 sets of 10 3 times a week. Then let me do 3 sets of 10. And now my feeling goes back to a 3 or 4. So that's one way to look at it. Have some people. There's another way to describe it. Rate of perceived exertion. It's not a pain scale, but some of them are up to 10. But just give it a number from 0 to 10. 10 being the most difficult exercise ever. 0 being super easy. Well, find something that is difficult enough at about a level of 3 and 4, and judge the level of difficulty or level of pain or sensation to a 3 and 4. The other thing is, if you have poor balance, let's just say, or let's say you have a bad knee or a bad ankle or something that'll put you at risk, but you still want to exercise. But making sure that pain doesn't mean that you're going to fall over or you have a torn ligament of your ankle or you have a torn meniscus or something serious. Something as long as you don't have any structural damage is what I'm trying to say. And you have, let's say you have poor balance, well, do 3 or 5 repetitions and see if you can do the movement correctly. If you can do it correctly and it's at a level of 3 and 4, okay, then 3 to 5 repetitions is all I can handle right now. But if I do 3 to 5, I feel safe, I got balance, and it feels like a 1 to 2, then perhaps, that's too easy. Let's go up to 10 reps. So, like I said, and you can apply this to all exercises, or you can apply it to the whole workout itself. Was this workout an 8, or was this workout a 4? And you decide. And so then think about it over the course of a week. Let's say I exercised on Monday. On Wednesday, I am still feeling bad. My soreness is about 8 or 9, where perhaps, number one, maybe you did too much for what you can handle. But if you did too much, then perhaps instead of doing the workout on Wednesday, maybe give yourself another day. Go to Thursday. And then on Thursday, you assess, okay, I feel better today. My soreness is about a 3 or 4. Okay, I'm going to do another workout. And so judge yourself exercise by exercise, workout by workout, week by week. And if you use those parameters, in time, you're going to be, next thing you know, 2-3 months in, you're like, oh yeah, now I got a program. Now I'm beginning to do these exercises well. They're no problem. Now, instead of doing a bodyweight squat, maybe I'm going to hold a dumbbell in my hand and I'm going to start adding some resistance. And so if you give yourself parameters such as the 0 to 10 scale and the number of repetitions that I can do correctly without too much stress, and you go with that, next thing you know, you got a program.
Well said. I think what I'm hearing overall is that movement is the key, and constant movement at that.
Yes. When it comes to exercise, it's all about movement. The thing that we also have to keep in mind is weight lifting versus weight training. They're two different things. So weightlifting is a sport. That's an Olympic sport. I'm doing lifts to compete against other people that are my same weight class and so on. So weightlifting is a sport. Weight training is just basically exercising with some resistance, with a little bit of weight. And so in order for the body to adapt to the stress of exercise, you have to continually load it. You have to continually stress it. So if I have been doing body weight exercises for 3 months, and now I begin my 4th month, and I don't feel much, then perhaps it's time to add some resistance, because I need to add a little bit more stress to my body so that I make some gains. When it comes to exercise, it's all about moving well and progressively adding stress to the exercise, whether it's go faster, do more repetitions, add some resistance. So when it comes to exercise, it's just, you got to understand that in order to make gains, you have to create stress, controlled stress. That the idea of no pain, no gain, I'm not sure who made that up, but usually if you exercise to the point of pain, you're probably going to end up in physical therapy, and then you're going to have to stop exercising, and next thing you know, all the gains you made are gone, because after 2 or 3 weeks of not exercising, you're probably going to lose a lot very quickly. So the idea is constantly adding stress under control.
Can you give us some advice in closing? Because going back to the triangle thing, I'd like to think that, first off, in the chat, how many of us are any type of triangle? So me personally, I think I'm more of an isosceles, because my diet is very small, my exercise is a little bigger, and my sleep is almost non-existent from times. But what would you leave us as like closing thought or argument to just staying mobile with whatever mobility you have?
Okay. Well, the way I'll talk about that is, I'll give you some ideas of how to address each one of them, because they're all important. So when it comes to exercise, I would say to make gains, depending on the age. Let's just say we're adults, anyone over 40. If you can exercise 20 to 30 minutes 3 times a week, for the most part, you're going to see some results. You're going to see some gains. When it comes to diet, the first thing that most people talk about is controlling your calories. The older you get, the less calories that you need, mostly because your body cannot burn those calories like when you were young. So the first thing that I would tell people when it comes to diet is manage your calories well. And then the second part of that is trying to have some balance between carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And in my opinion, without, I'm not an expert in diet, but I've done enough in my lifetime that if it's sugary, all sugars are probably bad for you. One thing that I've always heard that is, for me, is common sense. If it comes from the ground, it's probably good. If it comes out of a box, probably not so good. So, consider that. And when it comes to sleep, many people, give you ideas, 8 to 10 hours and this and that. The reality of it is our sleep cycle is 90 seconds. 90 minutes. It's a whole sleep cycle. So if you can get at least 2 of those per night, so that's that's 3 hours? No. Anyways, if you can get 2 or 3 of those cycles per night, chances are you're going to get some rest. So sometimes 8 to 10 hours, that's what it boils down to, is commonplace. So trying to address all 3 of those in some way, shape, or fashion, in my opinion, is the way to go. You can't avoid exercise, you can't avoid sleep, and you can't avoid a good diet and expect to be healthy. So, you'll get comments every now and then. Oh, well, my grandmother smoked cigarettes and ate bacon every day and didn't do anything, and she lived to be 100. Well, good for her. But for the most part, most of us probably not going to live that long on that diet. Nor I don't think I want to live to 100. But when it comes to being healthy, you have to address those three in some way. Otherwise, your body's always going to be out of whack.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you hitting that up.
Got any others?
Let's see. So, what about us that even managed well, still live in pain? Simple walking, something you can still recommend?
Still live in pain.
Right. They're managing it. They're still living with their pain. Just something like simple walking.
Yeah. Well, the problem with pain is that pain comes in many forms. It could be pain directly from a structural problem. So if you're walking and you have foot pain, maybe you have a bone maybe you have a stress fracture. Maybe you have some ligaments that are not supporting your ankle well. So there could be some structural problems. So you do need to get some medical advice. Sometimes, unfortunately, there are things like fibromyalgia and things like that are very hard to treat and very hard to address. So when it comes to fibromyalgia, the patients that I've worked with, they just work around the pain. When they're having those bouts of intense pain, they rest, they take their medication, and when the pain subsides and goes down a little bit, then they go back to exercising. And like I said earlier, when it comes to life, it's about adapting. Even if you weren't in pain and you're going through a very stressful time, you're not sleeping, you got a lot of work, and as soon as that passes, get back to your routine. And so if you have pain, try to work around that pain, try to work around that routine, as long as you have gotten medical clearance that pain is not something serious and it's not going to injure you more. But the other thing, if you're having pain with walking, there are many forms of exercise. You can do water aerobics, you can do swimming, you can do cardio machines that are non-weight bearing or light weight bearing, like ellipticals or bikes. There's all kinds of forms of exercise that you can get your heart rate up without putting stress on your joints. So there are many ways to get cardiovascular fitness and strength without loading the body too much. So that would be my advice: is get checked out, get medical clearance, make sure it's nothing serious. And if that activity is the one that hurts, then perhaps you may need to modify your activities and find a way to keep your heart going, keep your muscles going, keep your joints going without causing any pain.
So here's the last question on deck, and you'll love this one. Mm-hmm. Any advice you can give to the Yankee fans out there in the chat?
Yankee fans, oof. I think they need some hitting. I think they struggled a little bit this year, and I think also they suffered a lot of injuries. So, I think the Yankees are fine. They're always going to be fine. They got more money than anybody else, and there's always a few teams that you always bet on. The Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox. They always got the money. So,
well, not necessarily the fan, the team. We got a fan in the house.
Oh, the fan,
right?
But what kind of advice am I going to give a Yankee fan? Maybe become a Texas Ranger fan. Maybe.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Maybe change teams. Yep. That's simple. Yep. That's no brainer. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you for joining me. Join me next Tuesday at 8:30. We're going to be discussing something else, not sure yet. We'll bring it up later in the week, and we'll give you a preview. But for now, thanks for watching. Good.